Okay, so essentially I wanted to do a quick comparison when I came back to the DC area to get a idea of where my game stood in terms of progress or retrograde or whatever, regression, compared to where it was before I started doing courses, playing, courses I never played every week. And also I wanted to see how I compared 145 slope courses that I knew to 145 slope courses that I didn't know. So basically I just wanted to try to play a couple of courses that I had some experience with and kind of see what I learned from the whole experience of trying different courses over the past couple of years. So I went and played 4 screens in Triangle, which I really haven't played in like 3 years. And I played Stonewall in Gainesville, which I'd played once in the past 2 years. And I wanted to figure out how things looked in there. So what did I see out of this? Now, basically, I've played both courses and had I would say, a pretty straightforward time with them. I didn't have nearly the trouble I've had with 4 screens in my past, and I certainly didn't have hardly any trouble with Stonewall like I did the first time I played it, which was the only time I played it. So I think that my game had improved significantly in a number of ways in that regard, and I felt much more comfortable playing the courses, much more like I could walk out and actually play the course and command the course. But I also felt that there was a big difference between Stonewall and 4 screens in terms of the greens themselves. I still think 4 screens doesn't have the really challenging greens that a lot of courses have. It's not the easiest green to hit, but it's not really hard either. The greens at 4 screen tend to be level with the fairway, which is one big differentiating factor, not elevated. Greens that are level with the fairway always give you the option of just bumping and running down the fairway onto the green, and then all you have to do is worry about the ball going through the green and off the back. They tend to have, at 4 screens, you tend to have swales and sand traps around the green, and that's certainly a challenge. There's certainly the opportunity to bounce off the back of one of the swales and go off into the woods. That's certainly a challenge, but in a large part, you can sort of lock out 80% of that trouble. And as long as you can chip reasonably accurately and get the ball on or near the green, certainly where you can putt from the fringe, 4 screens is actually a pretty easy course to play in that regard. There are a few greens, no question about it, where there are elevation. I think 15 on 4 screens, for instance, there's that sort of green. It's sort of where the sides and back of it are cut out down about 20 yards, which is, I would say, a sort of beginner, intermediate, elevated green, but not really on any of the other holes. Maybe number 13, there's the uphill chip that you have to play after the dogleg left. You have to go uphill about 60 feet or so up to an elevated green, and that's an interesting shot. Certainly a challenging shot for some players, but not really tough or hard. You just have to learn how to lay a ball up as opposed to landing it on the green. You have to learn how to lay it up to the top of your the top of the shot, or near the top of the shot, not have it go long off the back, and even then there's a nice backstop back there. The whole problem is it's a different type of approach shot, but it's still not a super challenging approach shot. So the thing is, at 4 screens, I was sort of let down by the fact that, one, the greens were generally level with the fairway, and second, a lot of the greens didn't have good grass around them to chip anyway. So it wasn't like you're going to hit a lot of backspin on your chips. Yeah, if you're in a fairway, you could peel off a layer of top grass and all that kind of stuff, the divot and so forth. But near the greens, there's a lot of patchy spots, dirt showing, sand, thin crabgrass in places and so forth. And it really was much more of a, like a 3-iron or 5-iron kind of thing play where you don't want to, or 7-iron if you're lucky, you don't want to hit too much blade where there isn't any grass. So it's not that good for chipping. It's more like a putting, like a Texas wedge kind of thing. Not really good grass to chip on, and I think that was the summary. But Stonewall is a different type of course. There's no question. It certainly was a level higher than Forest Greens. They were both rated 143 from the back tees in GolfNow, but there's no question in my mind that Stonewall is a tougher course. Forest Greens tends to be tougher tee to green, but Stonewall is tougher at the greens. Once you get to the greens, it has much bigger greens, but it has much more grass around the greens, much thicker grass, a lot more water, a lot more trouble around the greens. And while a lot of them are not elevated, they're pretty much green fairway level, it still tends to be tougher to play because you just have more stuff going on around the greens. And the grass is much thicker, and you just can't play these bump and runs as easily as you can at Forest Greens. You certainly can't putt onto the green as much as you can at Forest Greens. So I think it's a much more challenging and / normal type course than Forest Greens is. There's no question that Forest Greens is a tough course if you are aggressive with your driver and your irons. If you're trying to hit 200-yard approach shots, Forest Greens will chew you a new a-hole. There's no question. But Stonewall will not so badly. It's a much more benign course that's tight but not sloped in the sense that Forest Greens is sloped. So while Forest Greens can bite you because you're hitting sloped fairways, and if you go off the sides, you've got air in addition to the your regular length of shot, you've got additional air because of the slope. Stonewall tends not to give you additional slope and additional air, but it does have more carries off the tee. You do have more of a carry over water, over waste, and it does give you an opportunity to lose balls off to the sides if you're not hitting your shots clean, because they're spinning off into the waist to the right, left or right, and the greens are a little bit more of a challenge. Certainly more, even though they're bigger, big greens don't really help you a whole lot because you still got to putt back to the pin. So it's not like it's a really great thing if you have this giant 75-yard green and you still have to 3-putt. So overall, I still think Stonewall was definitely a harder course. There's no question that having a lake next to the 18th green is more of a challenge than not having a lake next to the 18th green. That was a consistent issue. There's no question that having, creeks and swales and valleys and so forth on almost every shot that you play, on every approach shot that you play, is more of a challenge than not having it. So there's no doubt that I think they're close, but Stonewall still a tougher course. But overall, were they 145 courses? That is a different question. From the back tees, were they 145? I don't think they really were. I think that they were good 130 courses, but I don't think they were in the 140 range. Certainly, I have played courses that were ranked in the 140 that literally would obliterate either Forest Greens or Stonewall in terms of difficulty. I cannot tell you how many good courses I played that were up in the 130s, 140s, that were just excellent golf experiences that were much tougher than these courses. But overall, they were fun to play. They were good to get out there and play baseline. I could think of a lot of good courses that I'd love to play again, and I'm glad that I played these two again, and I'm really regretting that I just can't go run around and play all the good courses that I want to play again.